Welcome to Manzanita Post, a rugged trading settlement tucked away in the wilderness of tall trees. A brutal region of West Elizabeth crammed with wildlife and wilder people. But aside from being slap bang in the heart of such a hostile region, you may be forgiven for at first believing this place is normal. However, as we're about to explore, that could not be further from the truth. In today's Red Dead Redemption Revisit, we're returning to this place to re-examine this mystery, and to address a couple of extra details I did not explore in the previous video. That was probably about 6 years ago, so grab yourselves a brew and a biscuit as we revisit Manzanita Post.
You ain't Swedish or Norwegian, are you?
Not to my knowledge.
Just thought there was something about the hair, the eyes. I stopped by this settlement over in Tall Trees the other week. Manzanita Post. Traded some furs for tools. All Nordic types. Real strange. They tripped over themselves to make me welcome. All handshakes and smiles. The smiles where the eyes don't join in. And there's an old feller sitting there ranting and raving in whatever language it is. Then I walk around the back and see another feller with his head in his hands and a girl crying. There's something real wrong about the place. Just kinda stuck with me.
Before we venture to Manzanita Post and start engaging with the locals, it's worth noting you'll likely hear from one source or another how weird the place is, how the people seem to feign happiness but not truly be happy, how they appear to be Scandinavian migrants of some description, and while that isn't something necessarily strange within itself, it is easy, particularly in the game's epilogue set in 1907, to happen upon some variety of testimony that loosely identifies something less than usual about the place, whether that be within the town of Blackwater or while out riding happening upon a humble campfire. But the most likely time where it will be pointed out to us that Manzanita Post is strange is during the main story mission, The Toolbox, where John Marston purchases himself a pre-cut house from Blackwater, and now for some non-disclosed reason must drive all of that timber into Tall Trees to purchase tools from Manzanita Post, in the company of Charles Smith and a couple of guns for hire, rendered necessary through the activity of the truly twisted Skinner brothers in the area.
We're gonna be heading up to the Manzanita Post.
Why?
The best smith around is that Norwegian fella up there.
So they say. You boys ready?
Yes, sir, we're ready.
And as it turns out, one of these guns for hire, Mr. Willard Wayne, is familiar with this renowned smith.
Am I finally gonna meet this tool maker?
Now, Niels, he's an acquired taste, but boy, can he work metal. Norwegian, you see? Viking blood. Fellas up there used to worship a god with a hammer. Guess I figures they'd still be making them. I'm not sure how much English he speaks, but Niels knows tools.
Now, it's unclear what Mr. Wayne means by acquired taste, but upon our arrival at Manzanita Post, we very quickly come to learn exactly what he means.
Nils, it's me. Willard Wayne.
Okay.
This is my associate, Jim Milton.
Okay.
He heard you was the best smith around. He needs some tools. He's building a ranch house up at Beecher's Hope.
Beecher's Hope, okay.
Have you got any made?
Okay.
Like I said, an acquired taste, but a heart of gold, and he's the best. You off someplace, Nils?
Okay.
Niels seems to understand what's being said to him, and yet his vocabulary is very limited. Despite acting upon the request with accuracy, his response to everything is
okay.
The interaction isn't noteworthily unusual. There's a language barrier, and perhaps he's simply listening for key words and figuring out meaning from there. It's a purely transactional-oriented conversation that doesn't require more than basic acknowledgement. But considering how Niels drops what he's doing, immediately fetches a box of tools and takes them to the wagon, you can't help but wonder if he's trying to get through this interaction as quickly as possible. I mean, the man doesn't even stick around to negotiate payment. He simply trusts that Willard Wayne will make good on his promise and not be brutally murdered by a band of ravenous outlaws in the next 120 seconds.
Jesus.
This interaction with Niels as our introduction to this trading post is weird. The language barrier aspect makes perfect sense. Niels' understanding of English may very well boil down to simply okay, and the basic comprehension of keywords relevant to his trade through experience. But it's allowing John Marston's little caravan to leave without discussing payment terms that struck me as unusual. Sure, you could say Willard Wayne and Niels have a business relationship. Clearly they've crossed paths multiple times before. But how was that precedent set? Sure, at this point it may very well be trust that Mr. Wayne may make good, but that trust had to be established somewhere. And considering the language barrier, how quickly Niels sorts us out, and how quick he is to depart once he's rendered his services, I get the feeling this dynamic was initially established through a lack of care for being paid, like maybe more than anything he wants us to simply move along. And that would line up a bit with the campfire encounter from earlier. The smiles where the eyes don't join in. A saying where the camper recalls being accommodated quite nicely by the residents of Manzanita Post. But he could tell deep down, their hospitality and kindness, the very version of their small community they're projecting into the world, was not a representation of their emotions. And that interaction with Niels is our very own taste of that. It's not confirmation within itself, but it seems to be a thread to pull on. But now that we're here, what else can we learn about Manzanita Post? Well, the two buildings confirm the residents are in fact Scandinavian, or at least the buildings have Scandinavian sod or turf roofs, suggesting they were constructed by people from that part of the world, vaguely speaking. That, of course, combined with the log cabin aesthetic, a combination very popular in that part of the world up until the late 19th century. As for the people, they appear to be a hard-working assortment, but interactions with them as we visit do not seem to go beyond the surface level.
Morning. You sure got friendly folk around here, huh?
Aha!
You folks sure is lucky.
Ta vare på deg selv.
Good morning. Quite some day.
Jeg vil gjerne nyte det, men jeg klarer ikke.
Make the most of it.
Vi ses.
Morning, mister.
Morning, sir.
Fine country around here.
Huh.
Real fine.
You take care.
They're pleasant enough, but deep conversations are very evidently going to go wanting here. But even still, all of that can be chalked down to a language barrier. But then there's the area to take into consideration, which is a weird point within itself. Why would they settle in tall trees? The region, circa 1907, is hell on earth. The Skinner brothers are running amok in numbers, torturing and killing whomever for enjoyment. The bloodied remnants of camps of travellers simply passing through the area can be found all over the place. The Skinner brothers are brazen. They'll attack during nighttime and broad daylight. Their own camps can be found situated not far from Manzanita Post. The question, of course, is why haven't they attacked Manzanita Post? They clearly have no problem assaulting settlements. As of course, during the main story, they do target Beecher's Hope and take Uncle. And it's highly improbable the trading settlement has flown under their radar, as our first introduction to them is an ambush that they spring moments after we leave it. And we're supposed to believe this most vile band of murderers simply leave Manzanita Post alone? This group of the cruelest, raging men saw the settlement and thought, yeah, we'll allow it? These people live for the kill. They have no regard for civilization, no interest in money. Their existence is purely based on their own cruelty. Are they simply outmatched by the friendly but unhappy Scandinavians? Or is there another reason why they aren't attacking the settlement that's right on their doorstep, proverbially speaking? Even then, they're more than happy to attack a caravan of 2 wagons, laden with little more than tools and wood, yet somehow protected by 4 armed, capable men, whom, despite being bushwhacked, proceed to annihilate this raiding party, and at no point do the Skinners try and run away. which leads me to believe that fear does not factor in their ambushes.
Where is he?
Perhaps then Manzanita Post has some degree of arrangement with the Skinner brothers. Perhaps they provide them with tools, weapons, and in return the Skinners simply leave them alone. A continuously mutually beneficial relationship that ensures neither side will renege easily. That is not the dark secret that Manzanita Post has in store for us, but it's something that I thought was worthy of note. And while we're on this topic of tall trees not being the most hospitable of places, we can learn in the news of the disappearance of the Blackwater Athletics team in 1899, whose bodies we can find in 1907 not terribly far from Manzanita Post in tall trees, where they appear to share a shallow mass grave where it's apparent their deaths were not of natural causes. This group of highly athletic men lay murdered, mutilated, and their killer, or more likely killers, are nowhere to be found. The point, above all else, is tall trees is not an easy place to call home. It's an even harder place to survive, and you can't help but wonder if these humble people are surviving against the odds, or if somehow and some way they are a factor in the odds themselves. But now let's turn our focus to the fact that the comments about this place harbouring some kind of secret are well founded. There is, in fact, a dark secret we can find here. You see, the trading post has two main buildings. The main building cannot be accessed. It has no interior, so the doors are locked. And then to its left from the road, there's this cabin, the interior to which we can access. It's cosily furnished, but what will likely stand out to you is the prompt to inspect the floorboards. In doing so, we will find a hidden photograph, simply named Norwegian Photo. In the image, we'll see a man, a woman, and an infant. But it's on the flip side of this image that things get more interesting. For it will simply read, Uren. And a quick Google search tells me that translates to unclean. What could possibly be unclean about a loving family? The picture is incomplete. Pardon the pun. Fortunately, there's more, for should we inspect the chimney, we will find a journal page written in Norwegian. And this is what it translates to. To live with this guilt is not to live. It is a slow and painful death, the least I deserve. I hate going to sleep because the only face I see is yours, and all I hear are your screams. Father says that it was the only alternative, but he becomes more worried with each passing day. He knows it. We know it. May the Lord forgive us. This letter is so obviously a declaration of guilt with regards to something. A horrific deed perpetrated by one of, some, or even all of the residents of Manzanita Post. It doesn't take much to piece together the note is likely alluding to a murder, but for confirmation that that is indeed the foul deed in question, if the parameters are correct, one of the Norwegian folks here will react to you finding this note. If you hogtie this man and search him, we will find a Norwegian newspaper scrap. Again, it's entirely in Norwegian, but it can be translated, so the headline reads, Horrendous Killing in Lyngdal, and the article reads as follows. A man, a woman, and a child found bruised and stabbed in the woods behind Austad yesterday morning. It is said the man originally came from Tangier in French North Africa, and the woman was in a religious community who lived in a farm near Korshamn. The child was no more than 2 years old. The rest of the small community, which, according to other people, has mostly lived a secluded life, has mysteriously disappeared, and the police encourage everyone who has information about where the community may be located to contact them as quickly as possible. Well, the good news is I think we found the missing community. The bad news is they appear to be wanted back in their native land for murder. The murder of one of their own, no less, perhaps for raising a family with an outsider. A man from Tangier on the northern tip of modern-day Morocco. Or at least that's the implication from the article. They were a very insular community and couldn't tolerate their blood being diluted by an outsider. It stands to reason then that this was the family murdered, the unclean, the impure, and the people of Manzanita Post are the ones responsible. They'd fled justice so far, they'd relocated to the United States, settled down in a rural part of the country, and kept their heads down ever since. It's a place where no one knows who they are, nobody knows their past, and very little in this new world care to find out. And while being so far physically removed from their sins has seemingly freed them of the prospect of prosecution, it has not lessened the burden of guilt. And maybe that explains why the Skinners have left them alone. They aren't living, merely existing, suffering. There'd be no point in killing them, because on some level they'd already be dead. There's no point in torturing them, because it cannot compare to how much they torment themselves. Simply put, the Skinner brothers may very well leave Manzanita Post alone because it's no fun. If anything, a raid on this trading post would be merciful by comparison to the overwhelming guilt they feel. And the Skinner brothers just aren't the merciful kind. But is that truly enough to keep a sect of deranged serial murderers at bay? Surely, if anything, the Skinners would simply kill them, enjoy the easy pickings, and move on. Surely they wouldn't care to identify the intricacies of this community of fugitives from a distant land. I think then it's most likely they have some ongoing value. They are a trading post after all. Sure, maybe their sad, miserable existence might take some of the thrill out of it for the Skinners, but might it also be possible the trading post is somehow useful to them? After all, it's a reason people venture into tall trees for one. That means fresh targets. But also, considering how the Skinners live, maybe there's some value in making use of the trading post to get a hold of what they need but can't through their raids and attacks. Does this mean the settlers here are in league with the Skinners? Of course not. But there's no way they don't know about their vicious activities. Their sadistic actions are notorious, and they aren't the sort to go undetected. So I reckon on some level when they come here to trade, in the hypothetical scenario that happens, they know exactly who they're dealing with, and that can't help their conscience, can it? They ran to escape their own guilt, and now they find themselves surrounded by those incapable of feeling it, in an area swamped in the horrors that arise from that. And now their challenge has become to live with their remorse. Because, being residents of tall trees, they know better than most what people become when they can't feel it. Now, what's interesting to note before we sign off is what becomes of Manzanita Post by 1911, the events of Red Dead Redemption. Manzanita Post can be found in this game, obviously, but it's in a bit of a different state. A quick ride over there will reveal that it's expanded somewhat. There are still only 2 primary buildings, though their roofs are no longer graced with soil, but the place now has a rail connection. Beyond that, the site has also been expanded with tents, and the most important detail of all, the locals no longer appear to be of the Scandinavian variety.
Well, how do you do, Mr. Marston?
Time to place your bet, partner.
Howdy. Did you hear about Oscar?
So, the takeaway from this is the Norwegian folk who occupied this place only a few short years ago are gone. This becomes more apparent when you realise that house, that cabin where you saw the secret revealed to us, is now available to us as a spot to rent and kip in. Its once beautifully furnished interior is now stripped back by comparison. So the logical conclusion is the small Norwegian community that once called this place home are no longer here. And that leaves us with 2 questions. Where did they go and why did they abandon this place? Did it begin to expand under their watch and they decided to move along for the sake of keeping their secret? Or did they decide to move along sooner because we'd discovered it? Perhaps their paranoia led them to keep moving. Or maybe they had a much more intrinsic relation with the Skinners, who were also incidentally gone by 1911. Or perhaps even the Skinners or some other party got rid of them. But there's no information on that, though you'd expect there would be. Were it anything dramatic, you'd expect some nod to it. And, to be fair, Manzanita Post's existence in Red Dead Redemption 2 is a fleshing out of the settlement as befits a prequel. But that won't add information to the earlier game that's set later. So the only logical conclusion is the Norwegians that once occupied this site up and left, and the trading post carried on trading without them, as you'd suspect it probably would if it was useful to others. And so we have a group of people who fled their homeland of Norway in the wake of one of their own being murdered, with the killer or killers ranking among them, if any are innocent at all, leaving a fascinating mystery in their wake while settling down across the world in tall trees here at Manzanita Post. And then, a few short years later, they've vanished again. This time not leaving but a trace behind as to where they went or why they left. But if I were to hazard a guess, I'd say it's because the trading post naturally grew, and eventually they figured their secret was no longer safe here, so they needed to move on. Just on the off chance somebody happened to be nosy and understand Norwegian. In rural America, not the most logically likely combinations, it must be said, but paranoia and logic don't tend to go hand in hand. So the best explanation we're going to get is those people, that small Norwegian religious community, has pulled yet another disappearing act, and we won't be seeing them again. And that brings us comfortably to the end of today's video on the mystery or dark secret of Manzanita Post, if you will. I'd like to thank you all for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to go ahead, leave a like, subscribe, share the channel with your friends, all that wonderful stuff. It would be massively appreciated. And if you'd fancy popping me a follow on some social media, I'd certainly appreciate that as well. Be sure to let me know your thoughts in general in the comments section as well. Of course, it's a long road until GTA 6, even if it doesn't get delayed again. So it's been fun to revisit some topics I don't feel I did justice the first time around. So if you have any suggestions for topics that I can continue in that vein, then let me know. There are a few more ideas, of course, and things that I'm actually yet to consider at all. But you know, there's plenty of time to kill, so any idea is valid. But look, with any luck, I'll be seeing you all very soon with another video at some point. But until next time, please take care and goodbye.